When you got to be the first black woman general, how did it feel?
It was really very, very exciting. I was really tickled about it, and I was sad too, because I felt there were some people before me who should have had that opportunity, because they certainly were excellent people. But it was exciting, and it was scary.
Why?
Because I was moving into an area that I didn't know about. I didn't know anything about that headquarters level. I had never been up there. I had never been up there in any kind of position other than R&D, and I was in a whole other building. And so I hadn't interfaced with some of the people that were constantly interfacing with the Chief of the Army Nurse Corps.
And you were saying that you really hadn't been functioning at that level of headquarters. That this was a whole different. This was a new ball game.
It was a new ball game, totally new ball game, but not really brand new, because when I had been working in research and development, I did interface at the higher levels in government and talk to different people, because with my project, I have to go up and report and so forth, and I did that. And I also had relationships with the Congress through my membership in the American Nurses Association. At times when we have conferences going on and so forth, a congressperson might be coming to speak, I would make sure I got there and maybe ask a question, or at least spoke to them individually about something I was interested in that had to do with nursing. And so I got some of that kind of experience, but here was an opportunity to be, that was it. That was your work now. It wasn't just your opportunities to do this. This was your work, because you were at the policy-making level. And so that was, something that was to be concerned about. But I wasn't frightened of it. I just had a concern, and I knew that I had to build what one nurse had taught me years ago, I had to build my kitchen cabinet. I had to build my kitchen cabinet. I had to have people that I could talk to and let down my hair, so to speak, and tell them, help me, give me advice, and so forth. And so I did. I went about finding those folks that I knew that I could trust to be my kitchen cabinet. And so that's what I did. And I also knew that I needed to be known by the line, because those are the people who also sit and vote for who becomes the Chief of the Army Nurse Corps. And what brought that to my mind is when I became chief, and I was in my first day in office in uniform with stars on, this general came down and said, I wanted to meet this paragon that everybody talked about, who's the new Chief of the Army Nurse Corps. I thought, paragon? Where did he get that information from? To myself, I didn't say anything out loud. And so I said, sir, I guess you're talking about me. So we had a nice conversation. But then I finally met, what was his name? What was the guy's name who went down and got Noriega out of Panama? General,
I can't remember.
I can't pull it out of my head. I know it as well as I know my own name. Well, anyhow, I met him, and I said, "My God, I gotta really walk the chalk line," because I sat on some boards with him, because he was the chair of some of the boards that, as being one of the generals in the offices there in the Pentagon, when they had particular meetings about things which affected all elements of the military, of the Army, then I would be sitting there in my position as the Chief of the Army Nurse Corps. And I got to know the other generals that way, too. So it was a way of orienting myself. And there was another thing that I learned, is that I needed to know some other special people in the Pentagon. And I needed to know them in a way that was different. I needed to know them, but nobody needed to know that I knew them. So that if I needed them, I could go talk to them, and it would be confidential. So that was something that I developed for myself.
Why was it important that it not be generally known that you knew them?
Well, because then you could have interference. You could have people coming in and maybe interfering with what you're trying to do, or else keeping you out by blocking your ability to get there. You never know what could happen. And that was a highly competitive area. So
it sounds as if you really sort of your political skills were very much honed through the years of kind of operating in the maze.
Yeah, I was very observant, and I watched what happened and how people did things. And when I was in research and development, that was a great opportunity, because then again I was interfacing with the up on the Hill. I was interfacing across the board with other groups that were looking at particular items that had to do with the field in terms of healthcare and in terms of moving troops and so forth. So I got to know a lot of different people, and I got to know some of the things that went on. So I also got to know what I didn't know and what I needed to know and who I needed to know. Because I learned, and I don't know who taught me that. I can't remember who it was. It was someone who taught me that. Must have been, oh God, his name's on the tip of my mind. It'll come out after a bit. But anyhow, there was one guy who told me that, you know, you got to know who you can talk to. And you got to know who you can talk to who's got power. I said, oh, yeah. So you need to get to know certain people. And I said, okay. So I did what I was told. I got to know those people so that when I needed to have something done, I could say, this is a problem, and this is the kind of response I'm getting, and I need your help to turn that around. And 2 or 3 days later, it would turn around. So
there are any number of women, I think, more obviously a lot more than men, who have who sometimes struggle with that concept of power and you know, playing power games behind the scenes and figuring out how to, you know, be comfortable with the whole concept of wielding power.
I never really thought about it as power. I really didn't think of it that way. I thought it more of being able to accomplish my job. That's how I thought about it. I said, you know, in order to accomplish my job and do what it is I know needs to be done, I need to have these people, particular folks involved, and I need them to be informed. I need them to back what it is I'm trying to do. Or tell me, this is no way, Hazel, don't even go there. And the reasons why, because, I mean, just don't tell me that without some reasons, because I got to know why, and so I can live with the why. And that would be part of that's the way I thought about it. I never thought about it as being powerful. What I thought about it is more as getting the job done the way it ought to be done.
But I mean, you were also talking about, you know, how you dealt with some of the people who were not able to work with you properly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you had the power to make their lives miserable.
Well, you know,
which you seem quite comfortable in doing.
No, I'm not really comfortable making people miserable, but I don't have time to fool with people who are stupid. I'm sorry. If you're stupid, that's your problem, and I can't deal with that. You got to get smart. And I tell people that square in the face. You know, look, this is dumb. Now, I'm not going to be dumb with you. You'll be dumb all by yourself. So now, it behooves you to get it together, because sooner or later, if you get on my nerves too much, you're gone.
That's power.
Yeah. Well, I was in a position to make them gone, you know. But I never considered myself not in a position to make them gone, even if I wasn't in charge. Simply because if you're not doing the right thing, I'll write you up. I'll make sure you're going. I'll do what's necessary to get you going. Now, I don't want to do that, but, you know, if you give me no choice, then I'm not going to waste my time and my energy fighting phantoms with you and playing games and not getting the work done and not taking care of the people, because that's what I'm here for.
Now, you mentioned that you got a doctorate. Now, why did you go to that level in terms of education? I mean, you already had a master's. Because I wanted to teach. Because when I retired, I wanted to teach. I wanted to be in the educational system, and I knew what I needed to be there.
But you said you were chosen to get your PhD. You didn't say, I chose.
No, I know. I was chosen. I was chosen by a friend of mine. And here's something else. You'll get your name in. Get your paperwork done. I got you on the list. I said, please, give me a break. Don't do that. Well, I think I can get you on the list. I said, don't do that. Let me be on the list naturally. And then I wasn't on the list, and that way I got my paperwork in and so forth. The next thing I knew, I was chosen. Well, you know, the thing of it is, if you have friends at court, and they know who you are and know what you can do, you get chosen. That's what happens. You get chosen. You don't get chosen just because you're you. You get chosen because they believe in you. And they know that you have some talent that needs to be moved on to do some more work. That's how I have to believe it, because I wouldn't want to be chosen just because I was there, because that's patronizing me. I don't want that. I want you to choose me because you know I can do the job. If you don't think I can do the job, don't do that, because then you haven't done me any favor. You have not done me any favor.
What were the toughest parts, and what were the best parts of being a general?
Well, I think the toughest parts have to do with keeping your hand on the throttle, so to speak, and guiding your element of the organization through some mazes that you don't even know are there until you're right there looking at them. And they're not negative, it's just that they're things that have to do in government that change and move, and you got to move with them. Requests come down for certain kinds of things, may change a whole lot of things that you might thought you had in line. So you have to be able to move with that. You have to see, where does your element of the organization fit into this plan that is being developed, and that you have an appropriate seat at the table to discuss your contribution to whatever is going on. And you have to conduct yourself in a way that people are happy to have you as a person sitting at the table, and that you're making a contribution to whatever is going on. And all of your function and all of your energy has to be directed to that soldier and his family, because that's your job. You are really taking care of the soldier and his family in terms of health. And so whatever is going on, what are the health implications? How are we going to support and keep the individual from being injured through something we didn't take care of? I mean, you can't stop people from being injured, but they can be something that you didn't expect rather than something you should have taken care of. And so that to me is a focus, and it's always been my focus in life, the patient. What is it I must do to be sure that patient is safe, and the care that he's getting is safe, and that he will or she will walk out of this place, and they will be happy that they were there and we took good care of them, we took care of their family. That's what I'm about, and I'm about that even when I'm in the other arenas that I'm in, like the teaching at the university, because I'm teaching about what is your role in the health care of the nation? What is your role in the health care of this county? How do you participate and get things done? You know these things are happening out there. You know you have indigent people who are sleeping in gutters and getting pneumonia and this, that, and the other thing. You have a responsibility to stop that. And how do you go about making sure something happens that eliminates or reduces that problem down to its lowest possible level? And how do you sustain that? So while you're developing things and getting your own self in order, you got to be developing people to take your place. Because you're not going to be there forever. You got to have somebody. You got to clone yourself 16 times.
You got to clone yourself?
Yeah, you got to clone yourself 16 times. Not just yourself in the facts of you, but in the fact that their way of thinking about health care and the patient is that's the first thing you're dealing with, not you.
What impact do you feel you had in that role of being the first black woman general? Or does it bother you to even have people say, oh, she was the first black woman general, as opposed to she was, a general and she did a great job and the other adjectives don't apply?
No, I think it's important, and I'm proud to be the first black woman general. I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud for my people to be proud. And I say, and I've said to many of my young colleagues that I've helped groom and working on getting them squared away to be something that I want them to be, even though they may not want to be. I tell them, yeah, you should. Come on now, get on with it. But I think that you're a role model. You have to model yourself so someone looking at you can say, I can do that too. I can be, maybe not the first this, but I can be the first something else. And I can be the first something else and something else and something else. Because the world is changing and turning. There are plenty of opportunities, but you have to be able to tell yourself you can get it, you can do it.
Why do you think it's so hard for so many young African Americans to have that sense of self-confidence?
I grew up in a different arena, in a different time than these young people today. I grew up with a different type of a family milieu. We were not allowed to be stupid. Stupid got you a lecture on the bench. After 1 or 2 lectures on the bench, being stupid was not your thing. You didn't do that. You paid attention to your father and your mother. You listened. And even if you didn't agree, you didn't disagree. Verbally, you listened. And it was amazing, because later on you were saying exactly what they said. And all of a sudden it wasn't so bad after all. Well, maybe Mom and Pop know something. I better.
They must have been very proud of you as you advanced up through the ranks, your mother and father.
Yes, they were. My dad did not live to see it happen. But my mother, neither did she. But my mother told me a week before she died, Hazel, you're going to get something very special in your life, and you'll do well with it. And I said, well, the only special thing I know is to get you home, Mom, out of this hospital. And she just smiled at me, and she died 2 days later. And the next day, they announced it.
That you were going to be a general.
And I said, Mom knew it. Mom knew it. Somehow she knew it.
That's amazing. That
So
is amazing.
I've always said Mom is always at my shoulder. Every time I'm acting dumb, she hits me in the top of my head and makes my head ache. And I say, well, I'm not being smart now. Wait a minute. I better think this through again.
Was it hard to retire?
No, because I prepared myself to do another job, and that was teach. I've always done that. And I had 2 jobs when I retired, because I retired and I was going to be working at Georgetown. I taught at Georgetown before I went to George Mason. And I also, that day before, after I retired, I sleep in my bed, first day sleep in. Telephone rings, it's the American Nurses Association. We need you to come and help us get the Washington office in order. We're having these problems. Oh, my God. I said, well, I just retired. I was planning on waiting until October to go to work. Can you come tomorrow? So I said, yo, I'll come and see him. So when I came and went to see her, the gal who was the executive director, nice woman, she told me what was going on, what the problems were. And I said, okay, I'll come and do this and I'll work. How long do you want me to stay? Well, as long as you can. I said, well, it'll probably take me a couple of years because there's a lot of work here to be done. So I stayed for 3 years. But in that time, I was able to accomplish what I set out to do.
And even though you had spent the bulk of your life in the military, when the final day came,
It was great.
That was it.
Yeah, I went on.
No looking back, no regrets.
No regrets. I thought I had a wonderful career. I had a wonderful career. I did a lot of things I would never had a chance to do in any other place, in any other venue. And I certainly got promoted. I was promoted ahead of my peers for all of my ranks. I went in as a first lieutenant. I didn't even go in as a second lieutenant. So I was always a step ahead of my peers. And I did well, apparently. I did my job. I know I did my job. And I was not reticent to ripple the water when it needed to be rippled and get things done. And just when I was chief, I tried to get my nurses, my chief nurses, and they did real well. They responded beautifully, to learn how to problem solve instead of calling the office every time something happened. My God, that's dumb. You're there. I can't solve the problem here in Washington. Because I had one nurse call me and about something was going on with her and the doctor. I said, well, now, let me ask you a question. I said, I'm in Washington, D.C. You're there. How do you assume that I'm going to be able to solve this problem for you? Oh. I said, did I make a mistake when I assigned you to that job? Well, now, maybe you need to go to a medical center and get a little tutelage under another chief nurse. Oh, no, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. I said, well, okay. Now, let me just give you a few hints of some things you need to think about. You need to talk to the chief nurse in Texas, who is your immediate supervisor, number one, instead of calling me. Number two, you have chief nurses of major facilities in that town. Why don't you talk to them? They're having the same problems you're having. Why don't you people band together and put together a coalition and get things done? You can get things done if you work as a group.
You're a born organizer. Obviously, that's sort of
So
that's innate.
she said, oh. I said, okay, well, now, get it together. Don't call me again. Because you know what I'll do? I'll move you.